In 1968, the most feared man in Harlem walked into a restaurant called Wells, sat down, ordered coffee, a chicken leg, and some hominy grits, and then dropped dead of a heart attack right there at the counter. His name was Ellsworth Raymond Bumpy Johnson. And when he died, the throne of Harlem didn't just sit empty, it started a war. A war so brutal, so calculated, and so unbelievable that Hollywood made movies about it, and still didn't tell you the half of it. Because here's what nobody told you. Bumpy Johnson didn't just rule Harlem, he was Harlem. You wanted to open a number spot on the avenue? You went to Bumpy. You wanted to turn your brownstone into a speakeasy? You checked with Bumpy first. He controlled every illegal dollar flowing through the neighborhood for decades. And he did it while playing chess with Italian mob boss Lucky Luciano on the steps of the YMCA, while publishing poetry in Harlem magazines, and while dining with legends like Billie Holiday and Lena Horne. This was a man who once stabbed a rival named Ulysses Rollins 36 times in a single street fight, left the man's eyeball dangling from its socket, and then calmly said he had a craving for spaghetti and meatballs. That's who died that night in 1968. And within months, two men were already circling the empty throne like sharks smelling blood in the water. The first one was a country boy from North Carolina named Frank Lucas. Now, Frank Lucas claimed he was Bumpy Johnson's driver for 15 years. He said Bumpy mentored him, taught him everything. But here's the problem. Bumpy Johnson spent most of those 15 years locked up in Alcatraz. He was only out of prison for 5 years before he died. And Bumpy's own widow said that most of the story Lucas told about himself actually belonged to another hustler named Zach Walker, a man who lived with the Johnson family and later betrayed them. So was Frank Lucas really Bumpy's right-hand man? Or did he just steal the legend along with the throne? Either way, here's what Lucas did do. He looked at the heroin trade in New York and realized something nobody else had the guts to attempt. The Italian mafia controlled everything. Every dollar, every brick, every street corner. Lucas decided he was going to cut them out entirely. He flew to Bangkok. He linked up with a former U.S. Army sergeant named Leslie Ike Atkinson, who had direct connections to opium growers in the Golden Triangle. And then Lucas did something so audacious it sounds like a movie script, because it became one. He reportedly smuggled heroin back to America inside the coffins of dead American soldiers killed in Vietnam. Now, Lucas later clarified he didn't put drugs inside the bodies. He had a carpenter build 28 replica military coffins with false bottoms, each one holding 6 to 8 kilos of pure heroin. He called his product Blue Magic, and it was 98 to 100% pure, uncut, straight from the source. That meant it was more addictive than anything else on the street, and Lucas could charge whatever he wanted. He didn't trust outsiders. He only used his own family, relatives from back home in North Carolina, because he figured country boys wouldn't get tempted by the lights of the big city. And for a few years, Frank Lucas was pulling in $1 million a day. A day. He wore a $100,000 chinchilla coat to a boxing match. He bought his wife a hat that cost more than most people's houses. He had the throne. But here's the thing about thrones. There's always someone else who wants it. Enter Leroy Nicholas Barnes, known on the streets as Nicky Barnes, known to the newspapers as Mr. Untouchable. While Frank Lucas was running a family operation out of the shadows, Nicky Barnes went in the complete opposite direction. He built an empire, a structured, organized, corporate-style criminal syndicate modeled directly after the Italian mafia. He called it the Council. 7 men, each one controlling a piece of the heroin trade across New York, Pennsylvania, and into Canada. 7 lieutenants under them, dozens of mid-level distributors, and at the bottom, over 40 street-level dealers each. The math is staggering. Barnes was moving so much product that his net worth topped $50 million. He owned Bentleys, Maseratis, Mercedes, custom Italian suits, and jewelry worth over $7 million alone. And the cops couldn't touch him. That's why they called him Mr. Untouchable. He beat case after case after case. He'd notice undercover cops tailing him and literally just mess with them, doing random stop-and-go maneuvers on the highway for no reason other than to drive them crazy. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody saw coming. In 1977, the New York Times Magazine put Nicky Barnes on their cover. The headline? Mr. Untouchable. Barnes hated mugshots, so when the magazine said they'd use one unless he posed for a real photo, he agreed. He sat there, cool as ice, staring into the camera like he owned the world. That photo enraged President Jimmy Carter. He personally ordered the Justice Department to bring Barnes down. And they did. In 1978, Nicky Barnes was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Meanwhile, Frank Lucas's empire was crumbling too. In January 1975, police raided his home in Teaneck, New Jersey. He was sentenced to 70 years. Lucas flipped. He became an informant, handed over information that led to over 100 convictions, and entered witness protection. And Barnes? He flipped too. From inside prison, he discovered that his fellow council members had stopped paying his legal fees, were carving up his territory, and one of them, Guy Fisher, was sleeping with his mistress. That broke the council's own rule. So Barnes sent the feds a list of 109 names. He implicated his own wife. He testified in 8 murder cases. He took down the very empire he built. Both kings were gone. Both thrones destroyed. Not by rivals with guns, not by a competing gang, but by the men themselves. One flipped to save his own skin. The other flipped out of pure betrayal.